that had taken place, it was not in the name of religion. These were not done in the name of religion. They were done under the banner of secular countries. So we have to look at all of the things. And I'm not saying that religious extremism doesn't exist. Of course it does. And of course it needs to be dealt with. And hopefully we can touch on this. Finally, the issue of interpretation is the biggest issue, I think, because you have people, they'll read the Quran, they'll see an ayah, they'll give their interpretation or their opinion. They'll read a hadith or they'll read a number of hadith and they'll give their opinion. And really the issue is that is a person qualified to give opinion? When we have issues with medicine, we go to a doctor. We don't take, if I have a library full of medical books, I don't go and take my own information from those books. I'm going to go to a doctor and I'm going to say, look, doctor, check me. What's wrong with me? Or legal advice. I'm going to go to a lawyer to get legal advice because a lawyer is an expert in that field. So it's the same thing with religion, with religious scriptures, where you can see that centuries of study and analysis have been put on these texts. So including the Quran, and when it comes to Islam and the sources of Islam and its jurisprudence, it must go to the scholars of that field first and foremost. And then afterwards we can ask questions, we can contest, and they will respond accordingly. But I reject this, there seems to be in the modern age this unbridled call for ijtihad, and people calling for this ijtihad, they don't know what the word ijtihad even means. They think that it's just free independent reasoning, and it's not. So we really have to look at what the scholars and the experts have been saying all along with these things. Now, I think I've made most of the points I've been trying to make here, and mostly with respect to this Institute of Civil Justice. You see, necessity is the mother of all invention, right, as it is said. And really, people who have asked me, why do we need Sharia boards? And really the answer is, well, there is a demand for them. One, there is a demand for them because there is a need from the community itself that we have certain issues. We believe, or we have conflict. We believe in Islam as our way of life and as our method to resolve those conflicts. So it is only natural that these members of the community will turn to what they have been given as their way of life. And whether the laws say A, B, and C, or it says X, Y, and Z, the members of the particular community will subscribe to those laws. Even if an outside community may see those laws as unjust, may see those laws as irrational, whatever, it will not change the members of those community from continuing to believe what it is they believe. For example, I believe, I accept, I recognize, acknowledge that there is a secular state system, justice system, and many people make avail of it, and many times it is of benefit and works and is just. But that is not the case all the time. And for those people who have been through the courts, okay, this is a very important thing, because those people, a lot of people who,
I know,
they don't understand what people have to go through, especially women. The case of the hijabi who has come from a foreign country, doesn't speak English properly, and has to go to court for some issue. She has to petition legal aid to get legal aid. She has to go get a lawyer. She has to physically travel to these places, to the courts, go to the courts, which is a public place, try her case or have her case tried with a lawyer, and her husband or brother or cousin or friend, husband's friend, the one with whom she's having a problem, is sitting in the back. Is sitting in the back so that when she comes, she sees him. And she is all of a sudden like this. And when she's leaving, she sees him seeing her doing this or threatening her or whatever. And this happens. So the state system is not a positive alternative. It isn't. That being the physical example. In this case, Islamic ADR, what we do is many people, they recognize that there is a methodology which we should follow. For example, the issue of striking the wife. We were discussing this earlier. There is a verse in the Quran, idribuhunna, strike them. Now we can take the verse to mean, oh, okay, I take my baseball bat and take it to my wife because my tea is not hot. And some men think this is that, they have a fact, an unequivocal right to have warm tea, to have, and when we see the verses, even if you entertain this of striking to mean a physical touch, it has never ever been entertained to mean assault of the spouse. This is very important, because our issue here today in modern society is with spousal assault, whether it be physical, verbal, emotional, whatever. To operate in this way is not Islamic. The way the Prophet ﷺ was with his people, with his women, family, an outstanding example for us. And I understand where the brother is coming from. He is not saying that the Prophet said this and I don't accept that he said this. He's not saying that. What he's saying is that, look, I don't think that the Prophet could say this.
Exactly.
Because of whatever reason. And what this acknowledges, this is very important, what this acknowledges is that we recognize that the Prophet ﷺ is the perfect model for us. It is beyond reason, it is beyond possibility that the Prophet of Allah could implement something which is unjust. It's not possible. So I'm glad that we acknowledge these things, because this is what we must go back to when we say Quran and the Sunnah, the example of the Prophet. The way in which these verses are interpreted, the way in which ahadith are interpreted, and sayings of the companions, and later on when we see the opinion of scholars, how do we approach it? If I want to contest something, how do I do that? How do I approach it? It's very problematic for a person to come and say, look, Abu Hanifa didn't know anything. Or so-and-so scholar didn't know anything, or so-and-so sahabi didn't. I mean, this is not the correct approach. The correct approach is to see what is their methodology, what principles do they use, what is the word, the Arabic verb that is being analyzed. And when we look at things like this, we see, so if I come back to the example of striking the wife, idribuhunna, this verb, darbun, to strike, has a number of connotations. So when we go to the example of the Prophet, we see that what he did was he left. He left in resolve with whom he had conflict, of his wives. And he left and he stayed by himself. So we must acknowledge in our modern day context that with the Sharia tribunals or Islamic ADR or whatever it is imperative that we understand, one, the methodology of the people who are implementing this system in X masjid. You can have ultra conservatives, you can have those who are normal, and and see how it goes from there. We have to acknowledge the failings of the secular system. We have seen it. We see the decay before our very eyes. Islamic civilization ran for centuries, encompassed diverse civilizations and populations. We have a very young society here, and we see it's already in decay. And really, I mean, at the end of the day, there is a need for this. Like the brother was saying, husband and wife are having problems. They don't want to spend money and time going to this institution, this state system. It makes sense for them to go to the masjid, where people will not even raise their voices. And people will recognize, okay, here we have to be, because they have that in them. And this is how, on a day-to-day basis, it helps the common Muslim person. So I'm going to try to leave some more time for the brother to, add the closing remarks. And really, at the end of the day, Masjid al-Nur is, I think, a good example. And hopefully, feel free to contact us, and we can discuss these issues in the future in more detail.
Thank you, brother, and thank you to bring up very important issues of bidruhunna. Whoever takes bidruhunna wife beating in Surah Nisa verse 34, I invite him or her to go to Surah Imran verse 36, where the spirit of the verse is women are better creation than men. So we have to check and balance. Actually, the Quran is interlocked. Quranic verses are interlocked with each other. 6,239 verses. You cannot just pick and choose to make a law. You did it. That's why these laws are like that. And one thing more, there is not a single woman who contributed in the evolution and creation of these laws. more than 50%. Let me come back to the creation of the law, creator of the laws, our imams. Our imams were tortured and killed by political power. Imam Abu Hanifa was imprisoned and killed in the prison. So was Imam Taymiyyah. Imam Shafi was imprisoned twice. Imam Hanbal was imprisoned and killed. Imam Malik was the most unfortunate one. His hand was severed on the road of Medina by Khalif's soldiers. Why? Because they didn't comply to the wish of political Islam. And what? This is very important. 4 madhabs came in 4 imams' name. But let me tell you, Imam Malik's Sharia came to us through, none of them give their laws directly to people. It came via media. Imam Malik's Sharia came to us by his student Shaybani. Masnad Abu Hanifa was compiled in 1275 while the Imam died in 767, and his Sharia came to us through Muayyid Kharazami and Abu Yusuf, and Shaybani also, Zufar and Hasan. And then Imam Hanbal, his Sharia was given to people by his son and Abu Bakr Kati. Same with Imam Shafi, his student Rabi Sulaiman, Yaqub al-Assam, etc. And even the Sharia science book Risala, Imam Shafi didn't give it to us. 2 people gave it to us. It's like Shakespeare is giving us the Shakespearean literature through other people. And then if you go to anything and everything, things deviated right after the Prophet. The first election, Tarikh al-Tabari, volume 10, page 1 to 17, gives a whole hodgepodge and chaos about the selection of the first Caliph. But even then, that was acceptable. Then from Yazid and Muawiyah, it started political institution and establishing politics as an integral part of Islam. I will conclude with a sentence that Muslims' political life is not a part of Islamic faith system. But then again, who are we to conclude? We can only say what we think, what we can take from the books. We will continue inshallah next if we can, if God permits. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.